Hi, my name is Maxine Kaufman Lacusta. I am a dual citizen of Canada and Israel, and I'm also a Quaker Jew. And I published a book first in 2010 with a second expanded edition in 2011 called Refusing to be Enemies, Palestinian and Israeli Nonviolent Resistance to the Israeli Occupation. And it's mainly based on interviews with over 100 Palestinian and Israeli nonviolent activists and a handful of internationals. And it's, what can I say, I'm trying to introduce basically two concepts. One, that not all Israelis and Palestinians hate each other, and quite the contrary. There are many who work together. They refuse to be enemies by working together to try to end the occupation. And there's a slogan, the occupation is killing us all. And also that the resistance is largely nonviolent. That's not what you hear about in the news, of course, because red looks good on television and violence sells papers. But even in the first Intifada, 1987 to 93, estimates say between 90 and 95% of the actions called for in the pamphlets that were distributed by the unified leadership of the Intifada were for nonviolent actions. Things like strikes and commercial strikes and other kinds of strikes, alternative school classes, using funerals as demonstrations, flying the Palestinian flag, wearing the colors of the Palestinian flag, which was illegal at the time. Some women would hang their wash in the colors just as a defiant measure, and so on. And so all of these things have been going on for many years. Palestinians have been doing nonviolence at least since the turn of the century, 1902 and onward, including a 6-month-long general strike in the period of the revolt in 36 to 39. I don't know what else you want me to say.
So your main focus is really on these non-violent activists, and you try to think how effective these tactics have been to the solution of the conflict. So do you think it is truly effective to peaceful coexistence in the region, all these tactics that are being employed these last decades?
Well, I would phrase it a little differently. I'm not talking about solving a conflict so much. That kind of gives the idea of two equal sides.
Sure.
It's not a war, it's not a conflict, it's oppression by an occupying force, the Israeli state, against the people of the Palestinian people. And so it's a very unequal kind of relationship. And so the bottom line is that we need to end the occupation. And no, it hasn't ended yet, but sometimes you have to work and work and work, and then things change suddenly. South Africa is an example.
Sure.
And mentioning South Africa, they got rid of apartheid by a combination of mainly nonviolent actions at home and support from outside in the form of boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And hopefully this will happen here. As far as effectiveness, we don't know the end result yet, but certainly it's one of these paradoxical things. As things get worse, things get better. The more pressure there is on the movement, the more people working together, and can be very rewarding. People build relationships for the future, if there is a future.
Yeah.
And some things have changed. Some major checkpoints, for instance, have been either dismantled or really shrunk down to a shadow of what they used to be. Huara checkpoint outside of Nablus is an example, but others where it used to be very, very difficult for Palestinians to move from one place to another. It's not as bad as it was. Did this have to do with the persistent presence of the women of the checkpoint watch or Maxine watch? I don't know. But they have been there persistently. They also publicized to Israeli legislators and to the world, so maybe it had an effect. You don't always know.
And nowadays, civil society all around the globe are moving in huge demonstrations. We had in London, in Cape Town, in New York. And how do you evaluate these mass demonstrations of solidarity for the Palestinians? And in the future, do you think the global civil society will get more engaged in this problem? Especially because of the ongoing genocide practiced by the Zionists.
I hope that the trend continues. Sometimes, it's a flavor of the week kind of phenomenon and they go on to another issue. But I certainly hope that they can continue to be involved. I think this time Israel has gone too far. They've been going too far for a long time. They've gone too far in the sense that they've pushed their supporters to the point where they're saying no. Even U.S. legislators or whatever saying it's not okay anymore. You can't do this. We're giving you weapons and you're misusing them, as if there's a way to not misuse weapons. But so possibly this could be the beginning of the end of the occupation and hopefully some kind of more just solution. Who knows? But I think at the very least, mass demonstrations are sending a message to governments, and obviously quite a few governments are responding. I heard recently the governments of several Latin American countries have recalled ambassadors or envoys, and South Africa, the former president is calling for a boycott of Israeli goods. This is spreading. Church groups around the world are taking a stand, and it's kind of exciting. I hope it has a good outcome. Another thing I wanted to say in response to your earlier question about effectiveness, one way that nonviolence can be effective and has been effective is that people from the quote-unquote other side can participate in good conscience. There's not a whole lot of Israelis, for instance, who would join a military wing of a Palestinian political movement. But when it's nonviolent, you can be part of it. And also within the society, within Palestinian society, everybody of all ages can participate in various forms of nonviolent resistance. Even living there and continuing to live there is nonviolent resistance. Raising your crops, selling your food, whatever. If it's armed resistance, it's usually a small group of, trained people or young men, basically, with guns. So it's good for everybody, I think. Mm-hmm. And also the presence of Israelis, internationals, and so on, along with the Palestinians, it helps not only make the world more aware, but also it tends to be protective. I mean, when Palestinians are arrested along with other people, they tend not to be held as long. They don't tend to be beaten up as much, at least in the presence of the others, and so on. So all those kinds of things are helpful.
And do you believe one of the ways for peaceful coexistence lies in disarmament and a worldwide movement for the ending of mainly U.S. Military and weapons aid to Israel?
Yeah, well, certainly would like to see that. One thing that I throw out there is that what if the U.S. said, okay, you must use a certain percent, half or whatever of the aid money that we give you, not for arms, but for compensation to settlers who are willing to move back inside Israel. I mean, there are estimates that say that something like 85% of the settlers in the West Bank are economic. They're there because they're highly subsidized, so they can have a nicer home for their family. Something they couldn't afford inside Israel. Many of them live in major settlement cities like Ariel and Ma'ale Adumim that are, well, Ma'ale Adumim is actually walking distance from Jerusalem. It's like 12 kilometers. But these are they're bedroom suburbs. People maybe work inside the major cities inside Israel. They could easily move back if they had the financial incentive. The hardliners would then be very few and could either be isolated or perhaps forced to leave like the Gaza settlers, most of whom were hardliners. Not all of them, I met one who wasn't. But so, you know, that's a possibility. People say, oh, no. But, you know, it takes money and it takes a will. And I think will is the main thing that's lacking.
Mm-hmm. And one last question. Also about this problem of peaceful coexistence. What do you think needs mostly to change? Is it the social conditions, or people also have to transform themselves subjectively in order to live in a secular democracy? Because sometimes we listen to some theological claims, kind of, God gave me this land. And how can we make this transition to secular society? Is it by changing social conditions, or also individual subjective transformation in mass scale?
I imagine both. I really haven't given much thought to that. I'm thinking just from the point of view of what needs to happen is to end the occupation. At least that's the first step. It would be lovely if eventually there was a single democratic state, not based on religious differences, but a state of all its citizens. How to get there from here is not too clear. One possibility that has been discussed by people like Jeff Halper of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions is like a transitional phase of a regional coalition, confederation, where it's just the problems are too big just for the Israelis and Palestinians. If you could get all of the states in the region to have something like the European Economic Community was early on, where you could live and work in any of them, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, maybe Syria and Egypt once they get their acts together, maybe even Iraq. And so people could go to any of those places, live there, but they could only vote citizenship rights in their own section. Then it doesn't matter so much what your borders are. Because right now, people say, oh, we should have a two-state solution, we need a Palestinian state. Where? You know, what's left of the Palestinians is so piecemeal that it would be, you know, unrulable, and it just doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't make sense. And some people say, well, the idea to start with was kind of a form of apartheid. I'm not sure if that's the case, but it would be better if we could all live together, certainly.
Sure. Okay, if you like some final remarks, or if you want to show your great...
My ID thing?
Your ID?
Yes, I have a T-shirt like this, but I didn't bring it.
Yeah.
I wore it in a couple of demonstrations in Palestine the last time I was there.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to listen to you.
Yeah.